Hello everyone. Today we will talk about interview process. So what is the main idea of interview process? It's to check if that specific person have necessary background, right, and necessary experience to be able to work in that specific role where we are looking for a candidate. So for that, let's say some specific recruiters trying to find, let's say, good person, right, who will be able to work in that role based on their resume, right? And then our goal on interview is to confirm that that specific person, let's say, at least have that experience that was mentioned in that specific resume. So what is our first idea? So there are a couple of rounds of interview, might be in different companies. For example, first one, it might be technical interviews, and it might be English level checks. Then there might be manager interview, right, where a manager will be able to see if that specific person will be, let's say, good for that specific team, right, because of some soft skills, right, because on the interview process usually we are not looking only for hard skills, right, but sometimes we are also looking for soft skills to be able to understand that, that person will be able to work in that specific let's say team or group of people. So usually in terms of interview, right, we have the following stages. So first stage, it's where we have to explain something about our background or something about our experience. And like that question could sound like, hi, please tell us about yourself. What is your experience? What is your background? How you was able to start to work in that position? Like, for example, if you are looking for Salesforce developers, right, and somebody applied for that role, so we could ask him, okay, so please tell us about your experience in IT, right, and tell us how you was able to become Salesforce developer, right? And that person could explain, right, what exactly courses he was able to check, right, in which companies he was able to work on, how big and how many projects he was able to take participation, right? So we will be able to get some kind of background for us to be able to understand what kind of experience that specific person have, let's say, behind him, right? So once we will listen to him, right, so we need to listen carefully, right, and let's say down the road we could ask additional questions, like, for example, if the person will let us know that, all right, so I just finished some courses related to Salesforce, right, we could ask him what exactly courses, what is, like, how long they are, and like ask him to provide additional items. For example, what kind of topics you was able to learn, right, do you have a certificate for these courses, and so on and so forth. So when that specific person will explain to us what kind of, let's say, project experience he have behind him, right, so we will be able to like also ask additional questions. Like, for example, I was able to work in the company ABC for 3 years, right, and here I was working on different kind of project. Okay, please tell us what was those projects, right, and he will be able to provide some kind of background. Is it was like some specific industries, like, for example, financial industry or insurance industry, right? So at least in that way you will be able to understand in which specific industries that specific person was able to work, right? Which clouds in Salesforce he was able to touch, right? What kind of development tools he was able already to touch. So we could ask it, right, for us to get some kind of background and basic understanding for that specific person, right? Because of course in the resume we could have different kind of notes, right, related to work experience, but we need to, let's say, on our technical interview, we need to verify that, like, it's a truth, right? So once we got that information, right, about person background, so what we could do next is we could actually start with our technical part, right, and we could ask our technical questions to be able to confirm, let's say, the level of experience of that specific person, because in different companies, right, we have a different grading. And for example, if in our company we have a grading where we have a junior, middle, senior levels, right, and that specific person applying for example, for senior level, right, so in that case we should ask questions, right, that will help us to understand if that specific person already have that required for us senior experience, right, or is it, for example, associated senior person, right? So in that case, what we could use, right, as a source of our questions, let's say, sometimes if in company we have skill matrix, right, and in our skill matrix we have an understanding of what is, like required topics for our senior to know, right, and what is a, like level the specific person should have in the topic, right? We could use that specific skill matrix for us to be able to ask specific questions. But the problem is that usually interview, let's say, process, it's not very long, right? So it's about 1 hour. So in that case, in terms of all of the topics that we have in our corporate skill matrix, we just need to verify, like some most important topics for us to be able to understand that, for example, yes, based on these topics, right, we could at least mention that that person have a senior level. So as I mentioned, right, so you could use skill matrix. Like, for example, you could prior to the interview take a look, all right, so that the person with senior level experience, right, in the resume it was mentioned that he worked a lot with integrations, right? So that means that you could decide how to proceed with that specific topic. So for example, you could let's say double check that specific person experience, right, or you could just ask some let's say basic questions related to it, right, for you to be able to understand, yes, so that person have understanding, right? So maybe better to check for other topics. So it depends on you how you would like to proceed, but at least you see there's a specific correlation, right? So you have your CV, person shared with you his background, right, and you have your skill matrix. So you could use all these, let's say, 3 sources of information for you to be able to understand which kind of questions it will be better for you to ask. But please don't forget about such kind of scenario where that specific person, right, coming here from another company. So that means that in his company the skill matrix for the senior level might be different, right? It might be bigger and maybe he have more knowledge, right, or it might be smaller, or for example topics could be different. So that means that you are just trying to assess, like the average level of that specific person, right? Because of course we should take into consideration different kind of projects, right, that in the background of that specific person. Because for example, if there are 3 years of experience, right, and for let's say 2 years the specific person was able to work on I don't know, like Service Cloud, right, and in addition to that he was able to work let me think, on integrations, right, for example. So in that case, like it's let's say the most topics that he was able to learn, right? If you will ask the specific person about Sales Cloud, right, there might not be knowledges at all, and so you need to understand how, like based on the results that you will get from your interview, you will be able to mention to the HRs or to recruiters if that specific person, let's say, suitable for that specific role, right? So it also might depend on the project, right? Because I was able to see in my past experience that we have different kind of interviews. Like for example, in some companies we have interviews that actually helping us to understand general level of that specific person, right? Let's say based on different type of topics, right? And in some companies interview might be based on the project. So that means that, for example, if they're looking for the specific person to join their project, so for example, even technical leader from that project could perform the technical interview. And when that specific technical interview will be done, so that specific technical leader from that project already will look for the person who will be able to join their team, right? And maybe, like they are looking, for example, for Angular developer, right, to join their team. So they mostly will look for skills, right, related to that project. So that means that if you will add the specific person to that project tomorrow, so he immediately will help us to get some kind of, like good progress, right? So we will be able to allocate a good amount of story points to that specific person after knowledge sessions, right, and all this stuff. But you see, it's something that we also need to take into consideration, right? So there are two approaches. First approach is for us to understand general level of the person. Second approach is for us to assess the specific person that it will be, let's say, good person for our project. So next items that like we are usually checking, right? It's during our technical interview. We could ask that person specific questions, right? If you would like to understand how deep knowledges of that specific person in the specific area, right? So that means that you could, let's say, start with high level questions, like for example, tell me what is REST, right? What kind of basic methods and, for example, response statuses we could have, right? And you could continue and ask about authorization, connected tabs, and so on and so forth, for you to be able to understand, what is a level of knowledges of that specific person in that specific area. So it depends from the interviewer. I was able to see in my past experience different kind of situations. For example, there might be situation when specific person who is doing interview, right, have a lot of experience in the integration, right, and his main, let's say, questions, right, in all this interview will be related to integration. Tell me that, right? But the specific person whom we interviewing might even not have experience in integration, right? So then it makes no sense for us to go very deep, right, if there are no experience at all. So I was able to see situations when, interviewer was asking tons of questions about integration, right, and that specific person whom he interviewing was able to mention at the very beginning, hey, please, let's say you could put me in 0 points, right, in the topic, because I was not able to work on this, but I was able to work on the Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Experience Cloud, right, and all different kind of stuff. But there was no user story for me to complete related to integration. But on the interview process, there are might be different use cases, so we should be prepared, right? So next, let's say, round of interview related to check of, let's say, English level, right? Sometimes in different company it could be on the first phase, in some companies it could be on second phase, in some companies it could be as a part of the same interview, right? So it really depends what is the process and what is the standards in the specific company related to assessment process. So in that case, I would like to mention for you guys that when somebody, let's say, checking your level of English, like asking different kind of questions, it will be great for you to provide, let's say, not small responses, because I remember one time when some person checked my English level, right? There was a very simple question: do you like to play football? Yes. Do you like music? Yes. So you see, so there are not much, let's say, information provided back from my side, right? Because questions that I was able to receive, they were very simple, right? And it's like a, operation which require for you to just confirm or reject, right, something that the person asking, right?